All right, back live tonight here on In Focus. The Socio-Economic Rights Institute accuses the city of Johannesburg of shifting blame on promises made to upgrade the Joe Slovo informal settlement near Eldorado Park. 2016, the Johannesburg High Court ordered the Metro municipality to provide services to the community. Residents of the informal settlement are up in arms, demanding basic services, and are calling on Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi to come and address them. For more on this, we are now joined by Lerato, Marole, who represents the Joe Slovo Community Development Forum. Lerato, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. In 2020 or so, 2019, I read one of the reports from Seri. It was titled "Some Gains at Last," seeing, I suppose, a degree of some incremental service delivery through the implementation of the court order. But from what I'm reading, it seems the only part of the gains that would have been seen were about a couple of households, maybe 1,076 households that saw electricity being connected, and other additional tenants also being sub-connected. Is that a sum total of what has been done so far coming out of that court order?
Yeah, good evening to yourself and your viewers. Yes, that's specifically what happened, in a sense that as per the presentation by government, we were supposed to have relocated the 2,000 plus numbers of the people within 2 years to overflow land that have been identified around the place. Hence, we had then agreed to say, let's rather electrify the 1076 vis-a-vis the 3,334 households residing in Slovo Park. So it was an agreement, hence we were saying gains at last within the process or within the judgment on its own, thinking that everything is going to unfold quicker and faster. But 7 years down the line, we are where we are.
So the in situ upgrades, how are they actually supposed to be carried out? Is there supposed to be a fixed number of households? Because I'm sure where you're sitting now, you've got more than 3,000 households that are there.
When you implement the UISP dictates for first to start with ensuring you understand the number of people that you're about to develop for by calculating not only yards but shacks within that particular place, which then becomes beneficiaries of the process. In this case of Slovo, it became clear that out of the 1076 sites that we are occupying, we've got a number of 3,734 households that then becomes beneficiaries of the process. Out of that calculation, that's where you start planning for these individuals. So you either, if the land that you are occupying is not enough for everyone, you then identify land parcels around you in agreement with the community for planning on those particular land parcels, for those others to be then occupied there with services, of course.
But now, are you saying those numbers have not shifted since then? It seems to me if this process, for example, has been going on now for 20 years or even more in some instances, there are people who are obviously migrating and moving from all parts of South Africa who are also beginning to find settlement there.
I think that would be an excuse in time delaying tactics, in a sense that when you are planning, you plan for a certain number of people, then implement. But if you then waste time, it's either the number is going to increase or decrease, pending the situation around that particular place. It's either those people are nearer to business hubs, or they have sustainable livelihood in that particular place, then numbers possibly might rise. But in the case of Slovo, we know that we are supposed to be developing for 3,334 households. So that needs not to be an issue to be used where you have then agreed to develop a place, then you waste 7 years without any movement.
In 2019, 6th of November, then the city submits a funding application for Slovo Park. Just take us through that particular process and what did that funding application entail?
Maybe prior the 2019 submission, we need to go back to 2016 judgment. Immediately after the judgment, the city then made an application of 395 households, which was then rejected by the committee in saying, we still realize that you do not understand what UISP entails and the in-situ upgrading entails. So let's then assist you. That on its own led to a formulation of a tax team where we invited professionals to try and assist the city and province in unlocking and the policy itself for them to understand. We then took us almost 2 years to develop.
That's Lerato Marole there. He speaks on behalf of the Slovo Park Community Development Forum. We're part of this process of the in-situ upgrade of this informal settlement. We seem to have lost the connection to him there as he's expanding for us as to what has been achieved so far and what still needs to be done. And it was very interesting to find out what they are going to do as far as the funding application is concerned. Remember, the informal settlement is calling for the Premier to come and address them, as well as the MEC for Human Settlement, Lebogang Maile. We'll try and get back to that conversation in a moment. Stay with us. All right, we seem to have him back. Lerato, we seem to have you back here. So you were saying that a task team was formed after the government presented you with a business plan for about 300 or so houses, and you're saying you seemingly don't understand what the court order is saying you must do. What did the task team then do?
The role of the task team was to formulate the actual application, which had to start with, one, knowing the numbers of people residing in Slovo Park. Two, then develop a business plan in regard to that, which then took us a year plus for it to be submitted. It was submitted, and I can tell you, where we are seated now, we have not yet received a written document in acknowledgement that acknowledges that particular application or approval for that matter from the province. Yeah. And we have been acquiring, and it's 7 years down the line, nothing is coming forth. Though we then moved on to develop other documents, which was one, the social compact, and also the upgrading plan of the informal settlement. We now have all these documents, of which are a challenge as we speak. We had the first one, which was the application, then policy changes influences certain things. In the main, for 2 years, the city did not even have a panel to appoint consultant to do work. So province came in, they appointed somebody to come and assist in regard to planning, where we then developed this other upgrading plan.
Yeah.
And the social compact was then agreed to, and the committee have signed. But 2 months, 3 months down the line, the city have not yet signed, the province have not yet signed that particular social compact as an agreement, which then stops the process in saying, how do you then sign an upgrading plan when we still have two outstanding documents, one being the application on its own and its approval in writing, two, the social compact produced to say it has been signed. That would then lead to the upgrading plan that was agreed upon for implementation.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing that has ensued also, which is leading to some of these contracts lapsing, is the resignation of various officials at different stages. How is that being addressed?
You know, the challenge that we have with this process is that every time when you reach certain milestones, thinking that you are moving forward, an integral part or an influential official will then be removed from the process, and they bring somebody else that would start afresh. And that on its own would take that person about a year or so to start familiarizing himself or herself with processes. And it's a delaying tactic that has been played all along for the past 30 years to us. Even now, after the judgment, it's still the same tactic being used to delay the process of development.
So you, as you're sitting right now, you have rejected the layout that was developed by Urban Dynamics. Is there a new layout that has been submitted?
We have rejected the layout. A desktop layout is not in line with the in-situ upgrading or UISP implementation for that matter. We are not developing a greenfield development where you disregard the livelihoods and every other thing that exists in that particular settlement. You bringing a new township on your own. So in the UISP, it dictates that there must be proper community participation and engagement within the processes so that we sustain one livelihood and make sure that we enhance what is there and even bringing more into the process on its own. So, yes, there has been an engaged layout map that we are engaged on, which is supported by the community and it's in line with our in-situ upgrading.
So tell me, when you say you must retain what is there, what would that look like in practice? I mean, there are people probably with early childhood development centers. There might be people who have already established some kind of entrepreneurial ventures. It could be panel beating, fixing of cars, and so on and so forth.
Yes, basically the first focus would be the residential part. As to how people are seated and maintaining their lives. Remember, in places like this, you would have smaller businesses that must be sustained as any kind of livelihood, be it farming, be it whatever it may be, must then be adhered to and looked at and be given a first priority towards the very same development. Two, the moving in planning for engineering implementation must also capacitate or consider all these other elements that exist within that particular place, so that you do not only develop for an individual, then you do away with the whole history or process that has been existing.
So what is the thinking? Why did the government consultants say, well, we need to demolish everything here and construct new freestanding houses and rental apartments? Is this a way in which they would want to get people properly registered and be able to collect revenue for the services provided?
I think the challenge that we have is the understanding and unpacking of the UISP. That's number one. Either by consultant or official. That's number one. And two, the UISP on its own, it's hard work according to certain individuals, because it needs one to be mostly in engagement with community on the ground, have proper community participation, of which at most it would be hard work for for most of our officials. So they have preferred greenfield development at most as a solution to the process. But realizing that informal settlements are here and they are here to stay. Similarly, you would look at Slovo Park and its existence. Kliptown is just nearby us here. It's been there for years. There is nothing. You can't assist. For as long as you are not taking this particular document clearly, or this policy the way it's supposed to be unpacked. And we have brought a team, best team of professionals from Wits University, from students that qualified through programs that we were running together in University of Pretoria, University of Johannesburg, Wits University Cubes. We have brought them into this very same team in saying, let's assist government in unlocking or unpacking the UISP as a policy and the implementation thereof. But the political will is never there. You shifting personnel or you shifting responsibility at all times. That's why we are saying we need the premier, because we have said with every other person within the spheres of government. And now that we are done with everything, preparation of documents, we are then told all these past 7 years we've been on budget, budget returned back because there were no consultants or money was not used because certain work has not yet been ready. Now that everything is ready, there is no budget or we are not on budget, which then frustrates the community.
Lerato, much appreciated, and thank you for outlining and explaining that for us. Lerato Marole, Slovo Park Community Development Forum member there and representing their voice.